off and running on the 7th installment of the RZR Fantasy Football Podcast, hosted by myself, Nick Faber, and normally my main man, John Valencia, who unfortunately is not going to be able to join us today, but we do have a very special guest joining the show. The host of Powder Blue Review, the deputy manager of the Bolts from the Blue, a newly married man, sorry ladies, one of the best looking guys in the football industry and a dear friend of mine, Mr. Michael Peterson. How's it going, my brother?
Well, first off, you're way too kind with all that shit, so I greatly appreciate it. I'm doing super well. It is a little late here, 10:30-ish, what is it, almost 11 out on the East Coast over here, but going strong. Can't really argue with talking a little fantasy football to keep me up at night.
That's right. That's the best. You know, if there's one reason to keep me up at night, it's either a honeymoon or some fantasy football. And in my opinion, fantasy football kind of takes the lead for that, but that's just me.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I agree.
So, fans, if you're new to the show, you're listening here, what we do is we let the fans choose what they want to hear, right? We put out a Twitter poll, and we let you decide what you want to hear from the show, right? So this podcast theme is going to be Deep Sleepers. Make sure to follow our podcast at RZR Fantasy NFL on Twitter, and go vote so you can tell us what you want to hear. I want to know. And like I said, we're going deep. We're going way deep today. We're not talking shareables at Applebee's. We're talking stashables at running backs, quarterbacks, receivers, and those mighty tight ends. Michael, as I introduced you, it's fair to say you know a decent amount about the Chargers. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's kind of in the job description.
Okay, perfect. So they lost a pretty vital weapon this offseason, right, to their divisional opponent. Talking Tyrell Williams, going to Oakland. Rivers loves to whip that ball down the field, right? So who's going to take over that role? Like, will we be seeing Travis Benjamin step up? Or is there a new guy on the horizon itching to break out? Like, who's the stashable wide receiver 3 from the Chargers, Mike?
That's such a tough question, mostly because it's a question, honestly, that I've been trying to answer through my work as well. Main question, who is going to step up as wide receiver 3? And a lot of people think right off the bat, Travis Benjamin, right? Tyrell Williams was a speed guy. I mean, he was a threat to take it to the house every time he touched the ball. If you guys remember the games such as the Browns game, you know, he had back-to-back 30-plus yard touchdowns to end the first half, which kind of swung the momentum in that game. I mean, he's a baller, he's a player, and he's got that type of ability. So Travis Benjamin, right? He was not used too much last season, and Anthony Lynn earlier this offseason said they just didn't need him. He was injured a little bit, so something did hamper him, but they just didn't need him. So now with Tyrell Williams gone, is Travis Benjamin just going to slide right in and be that deep threat for the Chargers? I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if he offers much in the way of just a solid wide receiver 3 than that speed, and that's the problem. The Chargers like to use him on motions, jet sweeps, orbit motions to get the defense looking around, get their eyes moving away from where they want to go with the ball. And that's all fine and dandy because teams like the Rams do that, teams like the 49ers do that. But if he's not, you know, he's only 5'10" or something like that. He's not 6 foot tall, 6'1", 6'2", 6'3". So if he's getting double covered down the field, you know, a lot of Phillip Rivers interceptions over the past couple of years have been just chucking it up to Travis Benjamin and hoping for the best. But Travis Benjamin isn't the guy who's going to go up and catch that ball. He's more so the guy who's running out of bounds to avoid contact. So that's tough. I would want to say by training camp and as we get closer to regular season that the guy to stash is Dylan Cantrell, the team's 6th-round pick from last year. I loved Dylan Cantrell. The guy's got ball skills for days. He's almost 6'4", 225 pounds, almost closer to a move tight end than he is a true wide receiver, and he's a freak athlete. If you guys pay attention to Math Bomb's relative athletic scores on Twitter, if you guys are familiar with this at all, he does athletic scores based on players at that positions through the years, and he had a top, I believe, 15 athletic score for the wide receiver position since like the 70s or something along those lines, since they've been doing those scores. So Cantrell is the guy I really, really want to look forward to. Some names to look forward to as well. Jeremy Davis and Artavis Scott, who's Mike Williams' former Clemson wide receiver teammate back in college, has the Clemson receptions record as well. So I know I kind of talked a lot about a couple different players there, but Cantrell's my guy who I want to see, but as of right now, that position is still up for grabs.
So are you going to try to stash Cantrell? You're going to kind of pay more attention to the OTAs, to preseason, and see who kind of swings into that wide receiver 3? Or if you were drafting right now, would you have any problem stashing Cantrell?
I would honestly not pull the trigger on Cantrell, and I think this depends on who you're drafting with and how deep the league is. My main league is 10, and all my high school friends don't know football like this, So I know that there are guys who I don't have to draft, and I know they're not going to pick up either because they don't know any better. But if you're looking 14, 16 teams, then yeah, Cantrell does become a viable option to stash. Once you start getting into, throwing darts at the board, well, how about you pick a guy with a ton of athletic upside on an offense that's been, on average, a top 6, in total yards and touchdowns offense over the last couple of years.
Right, like Phillip Rivers is always underappreciated, right? He's always undervalued. He never gets the love that he should, especially when it comes to fantasy. And what that means is that other players are going to produce from his receiving core because he is a great quarterback and is undervalued, which means his receivers are going to be undervalued. Keenan Allen is a amazing wide receiver, but we still got to remember that there's injury problems with Keenan Allen. I'm not saying that should deter you away from drafting him or anything of that nature. I'm just saying that's something to think in the back of the head. Mike Williams is young. I love him. I think he's coming up. He's going to be a great receiver, but he's a big receiver. Los Angeles needs that speedster wide receiver, and I don't know if it's Travis Benjamin. I'm not really buying into him, but it sounds like Cantrell could step up and be a solid producing wide receiver for this team. And especially if Keenan Allen goes down, we're going to see a lot more of these young guys, Jeremy Davis, Artavis Scott. We're going to see these guys, and we're going to see who can really step up. And it seems like Cantrell could be that guy, so I like to hear that. I'm very excited to kind of pay more attention to him. So that's exciting. Another wide receiver, though, that's a little bit that's on my board here is the Buffalo wide receivers, right? Both of them, Zay Jones, John Brown. Neither of them are being drafted right now. Robert Foster is the only Buffalo Bill being drafted. It's kind of shocking to me. Look, Josh Allen loves to throw the deep ball. He had 65 deep ball attempts. Keep that average that he had for the 12 games that he played, and you put that over 16 games, that's 86 deep balls a game. They just added Smoke Brown. Smoke Brown had a 17.1 average target distance, 6th best in the NFL. He had 1,659 total targeted yards, 7th best in the NFL. 17 yards per reception, 8th best in the NFL. And this is with Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson throwing to him. So now you're going to give me Josh Allen, who we know can throw the ball 85 yards. We saw it on the Combine. We saw it at the Senior Bowl. You and I saw it firsthand. Mm-hmm. We know what Josh Allen can do. I'm not saying he's a great quarterback or anything, but I know he can huck it, chuck it football. He's going to throw that freaking football deep. So if you give me Smoke Brown, I have no problem with it. Then let's look at Zay Jones, another Buffalo Bill wide receiver not being drafted. He had 5 touchdowns in the last 5 weeks. He had 6 touchdowns in the final 7 weeks of last year. A 37.4% dominator rating. That's 3rd best in the league. I'm not saying that's a great stat to go off of, but there's just things to get your mind, turning. So are you buying into Smoke Brown, Zay Jones at all in Buffalo? Do you like that offense, or are you just trying to avoid the Bills' offense at all? Now, again, we're talking deep sleepers, so this is last pick in the draft. You're kind of looking at some players just to kind of fill some depth. Do you think Zay Jones, Smoke Brown could be on your team?
So I think the deal with Josh Allen, he was a good fantasy quarterback last year. He obviously wasn't the best real-life quarterback, but since he wasn't the best real-life quarterback going into this season, people are going to be super wary of the Buffalo Bills offense. So if you're talking deep stashes, some of those, you might get the wide receiver 2 for the Bills super late because people are just flat out scared to pick any of their players. So if you want to talk about maximizing opportunity, and that's the one thing you have to do in fantasy football, you might be able to do that. If Robert Foster's the only Buffalo Bills guy getting drafted, then for sure you're going to get possibly their 2 or 3 as a deep stash. And if Zay Jones, again, I was actually surprised. I like Zay Jones. I think I drafted him either last year or the year before when he was a rookie because I liked him coming out of Eastern Carolina. I like guys who just catch a ton of balls. Sometimes that's one of the most transitional skills of just, a guy who knows how to catch the damn ball. It's kind of what you want in the NFL. Amen. So I like Zay Jones. I like Smoke Brown, too. I really like Smoke Brown when he was with the Cardinals. Carson Palmer was still slinging him the ball. I really like him as a vertical threat. So these guys have talent. They really, really do. And I think it'll go a long way in seeing if Josh Allen can take a step forward. Most definitely deep stashes. I fully agree. Zay Jones, that's real momentum. 5 touchdowns in, what did you say, 5 games, 6 and 7?
Final 5 games, 6 and 7, yep.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, that's like, I know it's not super consistent, but that's something to take note of, and especially if you just really don't know who to throw a dart at in those last couple rounds. And Zay Jones is there. Take the guy who is coming off, last couple games scoring a bunch of touchdowns and knows what that's like,
exactly
at the moment.
And
so go ahead.
Like we'll say, your last pick, you can either draft the 4th wide receiver from the Green Bay Packers. You can draft like the 4th wide receiver from the Arizona Cardinals, who maybe we'll get to here in a bit. But I'm just saying, are you going to take those, or are you going to take the number 2 wide receiver, someone who's pretty much guaranteed a lot of playing time? Like, I like the guys with volume. You know what I mean? Like, when it comes to drafting running backs in the 8th, 9th round, I want to go for starters that people are weary of. I don't mind trying to get a Ronald Jones or a Peyton Barber or players that just might not be the best, and we might know their ceiling is no more than, running back 15, but the floor is no less than like running back 24, because he's going to get that volume. And same thing in receivers. If you have a wide receiver who has a ceiling maybe of 20 but a floor of 30, why would you not try to get him with your last pick? Like, I love Zay Jones. And like you said, it was great momentum. We saw that Josh Allen, once he started to get comfortable in Buffalo, started to get comfortable throwing it to Zay Jones. Now, sure, same with Robert Foster, and that's why he's being undrafted. But we're talking about people not being drafted right now. And so that brings up Zay Jones. Like, he for me, I called him to be rookie of the year his rookie year. Like, I loved Zay Jones coming out. I was all on him. Now, obviously, there was turmoil, trouble, off the field trouble, kind of just didn't help him out. But as you said, he can catch the ball. And when it comes to a wide receiver, I would rather have Zay Jones, who I know can catch the ball, than John Ross, who can't catch the ball, but is so fast he might get lucky and get you a couple big games. I want the consistency over the home run. I just want to build a team around getting myself 10 points every week rather than 20 points 1 week and 2 points for 3 weeks. You know what I mean? So I love the consistency there with Zay Jones. But speaking of John Ross, let's talk about him real quick. John Ross had the 3rd highest drop rate. 12.1% of his targets he dropped. But he finished with only 21 receptions, yet 7 of those receptions went for touchdowns. That is a 1 touchdown per 3 catches rate. That's crazy. That's crazy. So you're telling me he caught 21 balls and 7 of them were touchdowns. This is like what Will Fuller was doing, in the last 2 years. Every time he catches the ball, every other time it was a touchdown. And that's what John Ross is doing. Now, I know they got A.J. Green. I know they got Tyler Boyd. But they spent a high pick on Ross. Like, I feel like the Bengals are going to do everything they can to make sure Ross can succeed, so they don't look like the team that drafted John Ross in the 9th pick just because he ran a fast 40. Like, they got to make this work. I feel they have to make this work. So they're going to start pushing him the ball more often, in my opinion. We got a new coach there. We got a new scheme, and I like Andy Dalton, and I like the Cincinnati offense. They added a lot of weapons in the running game, the receiving game. Like, it could be a good spot for John Ross. It's unfortunate that we're going to be without their number 1 draft pick, Jonah Williams, this year. But still, give me John Ross as a late flyer, just specifically on that touchdown per reception ratio. Now, are you buying into Ross at all, or are you just like, this guy was a bust, should have never been drafted that early, blah, blah, blah? What are your thoughts on Ross?
So maybe you have the numbers in front of you, because I can't recall off the top of my head, but how many of those games did A.J. Green participate in?
Not many. I don't have it right in front of me, but I'm pretty sure those touchdowns came after he left. Okay, so
I'll give both sides of the coin here. So obviously you're going to be wary about John Ross's production with A.J. Green coming back.
Actually, let's hold on real quick. Do you know when A.J. Green got injured last year, by chance?
I thought it was like the middle of the season or a little bit more. I don't remember A.J. Green playing much at all.
John Ross had 5 touchdowns through the first 11 weeks. Okay, I'm sorry, because he was injured. He had 3 touchdowns through the first 9 weeks, 2 touchdowns through the first 4 weeks, just to give us an idea, everyone listening, an idea. Anyways, go ahead, though.
Okay, so wait, when did A.J. Green get injured?
I mean, we'll say week 8. I don't know either. I probably should know that, but I don't know that. So we'll say week 8. Before week 8, John Ross had 2 touchdowns and just over 15 targets.
Okay, so if A.J. Green was gone, obviously it opened things up for Ross. It's very understandable. But on the flip side, you're getting a head coach, his name is Zach Taylor, and he comes from the Sean McVay, small little tree that he's starting to build at this very moment. if you think Zach Taylor is going to take something from Sean McVay and that offense, the Rams ran plays out of 3 wide receiver formations. I think it was well into the 90 percentile, wasn't it? It was almost like 93, 94. Like they almost never didn't have.
Even without Cooper Kupp, Josh Reynolds stepped right in,
Yes, exactly. So if you think that he's going to take that idea and bring it to the Bengals, who are your top 3 guys? John Ross obviously is, if any, the lowest, the 3rd wide receiver on the Bengals. So you got to think all of a sudden opportunity. There's that word again. You're going to have Green, Boyd, and Ross on the field a lot. And hopefully they're going to get Andy Dalton slinging the ball back there. And using the momentum that Joe Mixon had during this past season as well. He really took a step forward and is now looking to be one of the top running backs selected this year. I think the potential for that offense is going to be dangerous. And if they decide to spread the ball around the same way the Rams do, yeah, there's going to be some balls thrown to Ross. And I can definitely see him having more than 21 receptions. Coming out of the draft, he a lot of people wanted to think he was a one-trick pony because of that speed, but I mean, he's a little more of a complete wide receiver than people think, and he just hasn't shown that in the NFL. So, you've got both sides of the coin. The bad's bad, the good's good, and I think it could go either way. But yes, when it comes to throwing the darts, you want the upside, and John Ross has some upside. We cannot argue with that. I think the breadcrumbs are pointing to potentially good things in Cincinnati in 2019, and I'm a positive guy, so I'm going to stay on the positive side and say that I might be looking at Ross a few times at the end of my draft.
I agree. I mean, again, we're taking the last pick in the draft here. You're telling me there's a guy who has that much ceiling, along with what you said in the offense that's about to be there. Let's not forget, Andy Dalton has the Bengals rocking every year for the first 8 weeks before AJ Green gets injured or before he gets injured or whatever happens. They are always a good team. Correct me if I'm wrong. Last year they were 5-1 before everything started to go down. The couple years before that they were 8-1. I'm pretty sure they started a year once 10-2 or 10-3. Dalton's a good quarterback. Cincinnati's a good. I think he was in a bad coaching scheme. I think everyone wants to put the blame on Dalton and the blame on the Bengals, but they had injury problems up the butt every single year. They had, unfortunately, not the best coaching scheme and a team that's improving with the NFL and going the way the NFL is, which is a huge passing. It just wasn't built for that. But Zach Taylor's going to step in and do exactly what you said. He's going to try to maybe not mimic the Sean McVay offense, but he's going to do what Cliff Kingsbury is supposed to do. He's going to do what McVay did. He's going to be that kind of coach. And I think that's how the NFL is going. That's how officials are calling games, to make it more of a passing league. Obviously, we've seen it year after year, but it just isn't stopping. It's still going up. So I love the Ross there, but let's talk about another Cincinnati Bengal. They went out this year in the draft and drafted 2 running backs, right? And we all thought Joe Mixon was the bell cow there. They had Gio backing him up, and it's Joe Mixon's show. He's going to get 90% of the target, or 90% of the carries. It's all Joe Mixon. But then they go out and draft Travion Williams, and then a round later, or 2 rounds later, they go out and draft Rodney Anderson. Both running backs that could be studs in the NFL, given the right opportunity, the right scheme. I like them both. Are you buying in, again, late round pick, Mixon we saw with injuries. We know Gio's not really anything. Are you buying in on Travion Williams? Are you buying in on Rodney Anderson? Either of those two?
Yeah, and real quick, because I looked up the information we were trying to see. So the Bengals went 4-1 in the first 5 weeks, and they finished 6-10. So they did that. And we were actually correct. AJ Green played the first 8 weeks of the season before getting hurt, and then he came back just for the December 2nd game against Denver, which was another loss. But yeah, so
and
okay.
After he went out, John Ross caught 5 of his 7 touchdowns, was averaging 5.5 targets per game, about 2.5 receptions per game. Never exceeded 39 yards, but still caught 5 touchdowns. Just so we have an idea. So he's the touchdown threat, maybe. I don't know. Just something to think about. But let's talk about the running backs.
Okay, so if I had to pick one of these 2 running backs, I would actually go Travion Williams. And it's almost it's actually super weird saying that, because I loved Rodney Anderson prior to this past college football season. And it was just such a travesty that he had the injury that he did, because there was talk of him actually being running back 1 following the year and going into the draft. And obviously, I'm even with the injury, I'm surprised at how far he fell. But why did the Bengals pick him? And I fully understand he's a good running back. You can't have enough good running backs. As a Chargers fan, I know what it's like to not have, or to be 3 deep when it comes to that position. But Mixon just proved that he's like a dual threat back, that he can be one of the top running backs in the NFL. And Giovanni Bernard is a really good compliment. And whenever Mixon missed time, Bernard comes in. He's a fantasy superstar whenever he gets time in the majority of carries and stuff. So it's tough. It's almost like they had Mixon and Bernard, and then all of a sudden they drafted Mixon and Bernard.
That's exactly what they did. They just got the replacements coming right in.
Yeah, which is so weird. But I guess one of those two with the easiest route to relevant playing time is Travion Williams. I don't see Rodney Williams doing anything to get into Mixon's touches whatsoever. But Travion Williams, when I turn on the film, he is a heck of a runner. Don't get me wrong. That dude can tote the rock, but he's also super good at pass protection. And if you want to know one of the fastest ways for a young running back to be trusted and get on the field, it's to pass protect.
Yep.
So if they don't think that Giovanni Bernard is someone that they want to keep paying, they think that he's probably better off going somewhere else. They don't want to give the money over there. You have Travion Williams, and Travion Williams can play that complementary role to Joe Mixon. Ooh. So I think, if anything, that drafting of Williams probably means that this might be Giovanni Bernard's last season in Cincinnati. So Travion Williams, hell, he might be a decent dynasty stash actually going forward. So Travion Williams is my guy, can tote the rock, can catch the ball, can pass protect. I think he's everything you want in a running back, and he ended up in a pretty decent position.
I agree. Again, I like Cincinnati's offense this year. I like them to have a lot more offensive play calling, a lot more offensive plays in general, which is going to allude to more plays for the depth players. And that's going to be Travion Williams. I like Rodney Anderson a lot too. Don't get me wrong. I like Rodney Anderson. I just don't think he's as good as Travion Williams. And I don't think either of them are going to kind of, top Joe Mixon. I still think he will be one of the big bell cows that the NFL will see this year. But Travion Williams is a sneaky stash. If Mixon goes down, it's not going to be Gio's team. It's not going to be Gio running the running game. It's going to be one of these two kids. And so for me, if I'm flipping a coin between Rodney Anderson and Travion Williams, give me Williams. I agree. I'm right there with you. But speaking of running backs, another one I wanted to refer to was Chicago. Right? They went out and drafted a rookie running back as well, David Montgomery. But they also went out and signed Mike Davis very early in the free agency. Mike Davis is not being drafted right now. Mike Davis finished with a 28.9% juke rate last year, 19th best in the NFL, 4.4 true yards per carry, which was 20th best in the NFL. Mike Davis was a good running back on a bad offensive line Seattle Seahawks, a bad Seahawks team. I'm not gonna lie. Their defense was piss poor. Their offense couldn't keep anything going, especially with Doug Baldwin out. And Mike Davis just couldn't get anything going. Chicago went out on the first day, got him. And we were like, okay, all right, Howard's gone. Mike Davis is in. Now they go out and draft David Montgomery, and everyone wants to be weary of Davis, and they all want the new kid. You always want the new thing. You always want the shiny new toy. And let's not forget that Tariq Cohen's going to take some attempts away. But we're talking deep stashes here. Mike Davis might be that guy. Sure, we want to believe Montgomery's going to be the next Jordan Howard, who came in his rookie year and won over the starting position at running back because there really wasn't anyone in front of him. Jeremy Langford, blah, blah, blah. It was Howard's team by week 2. And that's what we expect Montgomery to do. But what if Montgomery isn't Jordan Howard? What if he doesn't come out and just ball like we kind of think he will? It's going to be the Mike Davis show in Chicago. I don't mind taking a chance on him because I think the volume could be there. And I'm not just sold on every rookie running back that steps into the NFL. I just am not. I'm not. So I don't mind stashing Mike Davis in Chicago. I think that offense has a great coach, right? We got Matt Nagy kind of just drawing up great plays like we saw Sean McVay do. I think there's going to be a lot of different running backs in that team getting the opportunities. Cohen will get his receptions. Montgomery will get his chance. But again, if he doesn't just step right in and ball, it could be the Mike Davis show, who's going undrafted right now. This could be a steal. I'm liking Mike Davis for a last pick flyer dart. Are you on Mike Davis at all, or is he just on the no train for you?
I think the Davis situation is super interesting. You alluded to the fact of how quick Chicago went and got Mike Davis. Okay. They did get rid of Jordan Howard. So obviously you think, well, you knew they were going to draft a running back. They got David Montgomery. But prior to the draft, they were probably like, oh, shit, we got to go get a guy. Because if we don't think Tariq Cohen could be, the main ball carrier, and if just something doesn't go right with whatever running back we're going to draft, or we don't get the guy that we want, then like Mike Davis obviously would be a very trustworthy guy to get. He was good in Seattle. This situation reminds me of a couple things. So there was a guy named Thomas Rawls who kind of balled out for Seattle, right? And once he kind of died down, all that hype, he really didn't become too much of anything. And I can't help but think this situation with the Bears is similar to when Carlos Hyde was signed by the Browns, and they realized, right away that they didn't need Carlos Hyde anymore with Nick Chubb, and then Carlos Hyde was shipped out of town to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and obviously again he's with the Kansas City Chiefs. So it all, I guess, comes down to who David Montgomery is and just how early he can show the Bears that he is their guy. And yes, you're right. You can't trust every single high-taken running back, and no matter what or how great the position is, the situation that they got in, they may not work out. And I think Davis is such a good insurance policy, but my gut tells me, again, this is similar to that Carlos Hyde situation. Montgomery's going to come in and show that he is the guy for the Bears. He's going to pair super well with Tariq Cohen and their contrasting play styles. And I think Mike Davis is going to be relegated to the bench and eventually probably moved by season's end.
So you're all in on Montgomery. You think Montgomery will be the guy for Chicago?
I would say so, just because coming out of college, if you remember, Montgomery set the Pro Football Focus record for most missed tackles or avoided tackles in the entire era since 2006. And that type of skill set transitions super well. I think it's the same reason why Devin Singletary was drafted higher than most people thought. And he wasn't fast. He wasn't super athletic. But the guy just could not be tackled, and he scored a lot of touchdowns. And I think being able to stay up and avoid tackles is a super transitional skill set and will lead to at least a decent floor in the NFL.
So you're right. I agree. And so we've been talking a couple teams now, Cincinnati, Chicago, the three deep in running back. You know what I mean? Like that. Mm-hmm. But so is, and you brought it up, you didn't mind being three deep because you're a Chargers fan. You've seen it. Speaking of three deep at the Chargers, we have Justin Jackson sitting third string behind, obviously, Austin Eckler and the main man, Melvin Gordon. We saw Gordon get injured a little bit last year, kind of, battle some injury problems, and we saw Justin Jackson come in, start a game. I believe he only finished with like 60 yards that game. He didn't, kill the stat sheet or anything of that nature, but I didn't really get to dive in on Justin Jackson. Now, I like him. We had a conversation via Twitter, and I was saying I like him to be kind of a running back one if Gordon goes down. But are you taking a flyer on Jackson at all, or are you just like, he's not really going to see the field, I don't even want to try to go for Jackson? Or are you thinking Jackson might be a little bit better than what we saw last year and start to become a proficient NFL player? What are your thoughts on Jackson? You're the Chargers guy here.
So I like Jackson, and I never want to be the bias guy, but I really, really do. So Melvin Gordon missed 4 games last year due to, I think he had 2 knee injuries and just wasn't looking too hot. So anyway, Jackson didn't get any starts. Actually, no, he started the Kansas City game. Well, in Gordon's place, obviously Austin Eckler got the start, and people were super excited to see Austin Eckler because he's been super efficient since he entered the NFL out of Western State, a Division II school in Colorado. And people just said, like, man, Austin Eckler is like super efficient, and that dude is explosive. And I think a lot of people thought he could almost be better than Gordon, honestly, on a week-to-week basis. Like, if he was given the shot, then we'd really be surprised. Well, it finally happened, and I think his first start was against the Titans in London, and it didn't go so well. Like, it was just weird. And I was talking to a lot of my co-writers at Bolts from the Blue, and they're like, it just doesn't look like they're running the same offense. It was like Eckler, they were just making it simple, but the plays were bad in a simple way. Like, it just wasn't anything crazy to catch defense off guard. Yeah, it just looked different. I remember is what a lot of people were saying. Yeah. So luckily that game was way too close, and Chargers snuck out with a W. But then later on in the season, they went to Pittsburgh, and that primetime game, Austin Eckler got the start again, and once again, kind of shit the bed. They could not move the ball. That entire offense was honestly anemic in the first half. Well, they come out in the second half, and they're just like, fuck it, we're going to give Justin Jackson some carries. And you're right.
Yeah.
In a half, he had the 60-something yards. So,
63
in total,
yards and a touchdown, plus 19 yards through the air.
He had one big catch, and so that one catch was for 19 yards, keeping the sticks moving. He had an 18-yard touchdown run with some nifty moves. He earned that touchdown, and I can't say the Steelers' defense was that great, but man, he made it work. He was that dude.
We saw that glimmer of hope, right? We saw in week 11 and week 12. In week 11 he averaged 8.1 yards per carry. In week 12 he averaged 7.9 yards per carry. He's averaging 8 yards per carry these 2 weeks. We wanted to see it. So then he finally gets the start, right? Let's go down week 14. They're playing Kansas City, who in my opinion is not the greatest defense. Now, Los Angeles came away with the win, 29-28. We all remember that game. That was a phenomenal game. But Justin Jackson finished with 16 carries, 58 yards is what it was, 1 touchdown, 3 receptions for 27 yards. So he had, we saw what he could do, but given the reins, he didn't light up what I wanted to see. And that's what's got me worried about Jackson. I love him as a running back, but that was his time to shine in the NFL. When you get a time to shine, you need to take advantage of it. And he did mediocre. Now he's got me wish-wash on, do I want to take a flyer on him or do I just want to avoid him at all? So I don't know. I don't even know where to think about Justin Jackson.
No, and I totally agree. Those the week against Arizona, the game at Pittsburgh were big. He only had 7 and 8 attempts respectively.
Small sample, yeah.
So then in week 13, following the Steelers game, they played the Cincinnati Bengals, and again that game was weird. It seemed like the entire Chargers, it wasn't a game they had to win. It looked like they kind of mailed it in. The whole team was just weird, dreary, sloth-like, and he had 7 carries for 12 yards. So you're like, well, that sucks. 2 catches for 23 yards. And then here comes the all-important game at Kansas City. He had 16 carries, like you said, 58 yards, only 3.6 yards per carry. Did have the 1 touchdown to keep things close. Right. He had 3 catches for 27 yards. So, put it all together, per touch basis, he's fine. Almost 90 yards. Just not something that you exactly wanted to see.
You just wanted to see more. You wanted to keep that 8 yard per carry going. It was teed up for him, man. It was teed right up for him.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
He fouled it away, in my opinion.
It wasn't the best, but again, this guy's a rookie. He is still your 7th round draft pick, and he's still exceeding expectations. So I believe truly that in 2019, if Gordon does get hurt, I think Jackson is going to be the starter with Austin still taking a complimentary role. But I think Austin needs to be more of just an offensive weapon in general instead of your backup running back. He needs to be out wide. He needs to be moved around and all kinds of stuff. He had 3 receiving touchdowns, Austin Eckler did, before he ever ran for his first touchdown in 2018. So the guy can do it all. But yeah, I believe Jackson will take a step forward. I like him. I like him a lot, mostly because earlier this offseason, Anthony Lynn stressed the fact that he needs to keep his starters healthy, especially down the stretch towards the end of the season. And with the way Melvin Gordon's season went, and he had the 2 knee injuries, and he just wasn't himself against the Ravens in the wild card game against the Patriots in the divisional round, he's going to cut back Melvin Gordon's, at least he's saying this, his carries earlier in the season. And I think you're going to see a lot more Justin Jackson early on. So, the ceiling isn't going to be there, but he has the potential to get you some points, especially in a deeper league, and you're really scraping at the bottom of the barrel, depending on your strategy. You need a running back. Justin Jackson could be there and really score you some points in the first couple of seasons. But I like him. I like the situation. But you're right. We haven't seen him much, and we're just going to have to see what happens in 2019.
Agreed. And the running back position is so small. I recommend, and I've been recommending you, if you've listened to the show, you follow me on Twitter, I recommend stashing running backs late, because you just never know who it's going to be, who that injury guy is going to be, and what running back's going to step up. So I like that. But we've been talking a lot about running backs, receivers, and we're flying through the show, and I love it. We're having a lot of fun here. But let's try to switch this to quarterbacks, right? There's 7 quarterbacks that are somewhat noteworthy not being drafted in fantasy football. So let's kind of flip our minds to a 2 quarterback set. You know what I mean? Let's kind of see which one of these we'd want as our second quarterback if we had to, or a backup quarterback. The 7 guys I'm referring to are Dwayne Haskins, Daniel Jones, Josh Rosen, Andy Dalton, Nick Foles, Marcus Mariota, and Joe Flacco. So of those 7 quarterbacks, Flacco, Mariota, Foles, Dalton, Rosen, Jones, Haskins, give me 2 guys that you're high on. Give me 2 guys you're low on.
Okay, so for my two guys I'm high on, I've got Dwayne Haskins and Marcus Mariota. I've got Haskins because I think in terms of rookie quarterbacks, I think he's going to start. I don't think Case Keenum is going to start. Haskins has got to be the guy.
Agreed.
A couple things. He has the weapons around him. And I know there's the Josh Doxsons of the world that, every single year, like, yo, Josh Jackson is about to do his thing, man. We've been waiting 4 years for this. I don't think that's it. But they did draft Terry McLaurin, who was Dwayne Haskins' teammate at Ohio State, was a Senior Bowl standout, and looks to be a guy who could be a super reliable receiver at the next level. You've got Jordan Reed. Cross your fingers, pray he's healthy, but he used to be one of the best tight ends in the league and was arguably a top 2-3 tight end in fantasy football just a couple of years ago. I know I had him. And if you remember the Thanksgiving game against the Dallas Cowboys a couple of years ago, where he single-handedly caught everything on their final drive, like, it was amazing to see as a fantasy owner. And then they've got a solid run game to rely on. You've got Adrian Peterson coming back. I believe it was on a 2-year deal. You got Darius Geis coming back from a devastating knee injury that cost him his rookie season. But this was a guy who people argued was running back 1 in his draft 2 years ago.
Not to mention Chris Thompson there. Bryce Love they just drafted. Like a plethora of running backs on that team. And another wide receiver, too, who in my opinion is the biggest steal of the NFL draft, Kelvin Harmon. Gets drafted.
Oh, shit. I totally forgot about Kelvin Harmon. Yeah, you're right.
Like,
so again, you're
loaded right now.
No, they definitely are. And besides the offensive talent that's around him, the Washington Redskins have one of the better defenses in the league right now.
We haven't seen that because of injuries, but they do. Like, the guys are there. The guys are there.
Yeah, and I mean, a quarterback, a young quarterback's best friend can also be a defense that helps him make up for mistakes that he may make early on, the growing pains and stuff like that. So I really do like Haskins. I know Jay Gruden isn't too bad with quarterbacks. I know Kirk Cousins is a 500 quarterback for most of his career, but I think Haskins has a little more of the it factor than Cousins does at the end of the day. But again, time will tell on that. Second, Marcus Mariota of the Titans. Marcus, he's been tough, man. I had him in fantasy a couple of years ago, really banking. I think it was his I don't think it was a sophomore season, but his third season where we're like, all right, he's going to finally put it together. He's got all the tools and talent around him. Like, Marcus is going to be my guy. I had Delaney Walker that year. I had that stack working for me as well. But he has just been so subpar the last couple of seasons. And his rushing game, like, we know he's mobile. We know he could run. That hasn't been the same the last couple of seasons either. I know he's dealt with a few nagging injuries, not like super.
No, but I think it gets in his head. You know what I mean? Like that, those injuries get into his head. So now he's almost like afraid to be the true Marcus Mariota that was drafted second overall. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, I totally agree with that. I know things like that can stick in a quarterback's head, but situational wise, they just drafted A.J. Brown, who was actually my favorite wide receiver coming out in the draft this year. I mean, everyone loved DK, Hakeem Butler, all these guys, but I just had to watch. Like, you could just watch A.J. Brown. I don't mean game film. I mean just have him run around and catch a ball. Holy crap, does that guy look like he's just been there? Like, he's been doing it for years, and like it looks like the simplest thing for him. Like, DK Metcalf looks good running around and catching the ball, but there's just something different about A.J. Brown, man. And being able to pair a receiver like that, who I think has the highest floor of any wide receiver as a rookie wide receiver, this year going into 2019, I honestly think that's Brown, and I'm super excited. I'm actually going to try to get as many A.J. Brown shares as I can in my late round picks.
So you're not worried at all about A.J. Brown somewhat playing the same position as Adam Humphries and then spending a big amount of money on getting Adam Humphries? They got Corey Davis, you got Tajay Sharp. Like, it almost seems now. I am on the complete opposite. I hate Marcus Mariota. I think he is a bum of a quarterback. Last 2 years, 24 touchdowns, 23 interceptions. He's a bum. I'm sorry. I can't stand Marcus Mariota. I can't stand the Titans. I think the whole team is a failure. And I like Mike Vrabel a lot. I think he's a great coach. But I just don't think he's like passing oriented. I don't think he is that Zach Taylor or that Cliff Kingsbury. I think this offense is going to be more ground and pound. So for me, like I put Mariota on the way no side. Give me Josh Rosen over him. Give me frickin' Andy Dalton for sure over him. I will take frickin' anyone, man. Anyone over Marcus Mariota. I'll take Nick Foles over Marcus Mariota hands down, because I'm just not sold on Mariota. There's something going on in between the temples that is just not right for him. Now, if he can come out and do what he did his sophomore year, throw 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, which, by the way, is the only year of his 4-year career that he threw more than 20 touchdowns, more than 20 touchdowns was his sophomore year. Other than that, he's on 19, 13, and 11. Like, I can't buy into Mariota. And then, speaking of A.J. Brown, I like him. I think you're right, dude. Like, I projected him as the number 1 wide receiver being drafted in a mock draft in like March or something like that. Because I love the kid. Unfortunately, I think he got put in the worst position available. Like, they went out and got Adam Humphries. They gave him 4 years, like $40 million. I'm not exactly sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they gave him a lot of money. They threw a lot of money at this kid who was a red zone like master in Tampa Bay and was just a reception master, which is kind of the A.J. Brown. Like, A.J. Brown's that reception master. So that doesn't worry you at all? You still buying into A.J. then?
So I'm not going to lie. Maybe my love for A.J. Brown has made me think better of Marcus Mariota because I definitely didn't. I'm not as well versed in his statistics over the last couple of years. So I'm not going to lie. Like, you just reading those stats scares me a little bit. I didn't think he was that bad. I knew he was pretty piss poor, but
he's piss poor, bro.
Maybe that's just, again, the optimist in me thinking there's going to be some regression to the mean, some positive regression.
Thinking, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you think he just can't continue to be this bad, right? So we'll see what happens in his second year under Mike Vrabel. But I had his situation similar to Haskins, and I it might be better in the head between the ears for Haskins, but again, this is another good, pretty good defense. You've got the tools around him. It's still a pretty strong running game. I don't know how the offensive line is going to look this year. I know they lost Klein and no, they just got Saffold. Yeah. That's right. They replaced Klein with Saffold.
I mean, they have a good offensive line for sure.
Yeah, so I'm just saying everything around Marcus Mariota still looks good, and I think that's why people get their hopes up about him every year. It's probably why I'm getting my hopes up right now. But you're totally right. I mean, there's something iffy about Mariota, and I guess time will tell here. I just liked him coming out of Oregon, and I think this is just one of those situations where I'm going to continue to root for him until the book is finally closed on that.
I got a big hatred for the Tennessee Titans and their fans, so I'm sorry, Titans fans. That's why I can't buy into them. But so those your yeses were Haskins, Mariota. My yeses were Haskins as well, and Andy Dalton. Some no's out of these 7 quarterbacks. Who are you thinking?
So for Daniel Jones, I just said, why'd they do that to the kid?
Poor kid, bro.
That's all my notes on him was just like, why'd they do that? So if you guys didn't know yet, haven't looked, Daniel Jones's Madden rating is 65 for being the sixth overall pick in this last year's draft. Well, he's only a point higher than the Chargers' 6th round draft pick this year. So yeah, like they did him so dirty.
Was 6th round? Was that Darius Slayton you're talking about?
No, the Chargers' 6th round pick.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chargers 6th round pick. My bad.
Yeah,
I thought you meant Giants.
Emeka Egbule, this random linebacker at Houston's like a 64 or 63, and Jones was 65. The Madden reaction video with the actual rookies reacting to their stuff. Jones is a 63 in that video, but my buddy Andre, who's Andre Weidengarten, you probably know him on Twitter. He's one of the, he works on Madden. He was like, I think we made him a 65 by the end of it. But like, still, like they had him as a 63 at some point, which is legitimately like a 7th round draft pick rating.
Is there a video reaction of Daniel Jones looking at that?
Yeah, that he's in it.
I did not see that.
So it's real quick. It's not like he has a good reaction, but like he sees it and then he looks down at this like pad he has and he goes, all right, well, it's, I guess, see why they made me a 63. Like he was confused, but he's like, all right, we'll just see how they got here. But yeah, like everyone else was pretty good. Benny Snell was a 69, like 5th round irrelevant running backs are ranked higher than him. So that's just absolutely insane.
Agreed.
So Daniel Jones, hell no. I don't even think he's going to start. Manning's going to have to do something pretty terrible. It's going to have to be similar to 2017 when they benched him for Geno Smith a little bit. But we'll see about that. I just don't think there's no way he succeeds whatsoever.
The only thing I would say for Daniel Jones is that he does have a good running game, obviously, and that does help out.
Of course.
And then I love Pat Shurmur, man. I love Pat Shurmur. Like, look what he did with Case Keenum. You know what I mean? Like, Keenum's not a relevant quarterback, but go to Minnesota while Pat Shurmur was offensive coordinator, and it worked out. So I also have Daniel Jones as a big no. Like, that's, don't ever, like, 2 quarterback league, I don't even care. Don't take him. But there are a few, like, again, we'll try to be positive today. and there's a few positives for him. And your other no?
Oh, I've Josh Rosen, and I like Josh Rosen. I was actually, a small part of me wanted him to come to the Chargers and be the backup and potential, heir apparent to Phillip Rivers, but he's a no simply because I wrote down my notes. Just show me something first, and he had some hell of a throw every now and then with the Cardinals that really show the type of quarterback that he can be. And I just think it was a shitty situation. I just think the head coach situation, it was just, all of it was a dumpster fire. Larry Legend could not save Rosen from that season. I believe the talent's there, but this is just a kid. Again, he only went through one season. Show me something first. It's a no because I haven't seen it yet, but this isn't me saying he's a bust or he's a terrible quarterback or any of that stuff. It's just for fantasy purposes. Right. Show me something first, and then I might start to warm up to it.
So what I say about Rosen is I agree, show me something, but what I think is that the receivers have already shown me something from Miami that makes me believe in Rosen because we're running out of time. The show is about to be ending. There's one more guy I want to get on is Albert Wilson. All right. Albert Wilson, first year in Miami last year, caught 4 touchdowns in 7 games. Now, let's not forget, he only played 7 games. He had injury. Caught 75% of his targets in those 7 games. Had a 1.83 yards of separation per target, which was good enough for 3rd best in the NFL. He had a quarterback rating of 124.8 when targeting Albert Wilson, 7th best in the NFL. He had a .78 fantasy point per target, best in the NFL. The best. Albert Wilson has the chance to break out in Miami in his 5th year in the NFL, or 5th year in the NFL, 6th year in the NFL, 2nd year in Miami. He is a speedster. Him and Kenny Stills chase each other down when they both are balling for touchdowns. Like, they are so competitive and so much fun to watch. And then let's not forget about the preseason MVP every single year, Devontae Parker. He's going to be a stud for the preseason, and he's going to make us all want to buy in. But I really do like Miami. I like the Miami offense. I think it's light years ahead of where Arizona was last year, and unfortunately, I think it's light years ahead of where Arizona is today. I'm not buying into Kyler Murray or Cliff Kingsbury and anyone in Arizona, but I am buying into Albert Wilson, and I think this could be the biggest steal. That's why I'm saving the best for last. If I had to pick one guy, the last pick of a draft, and pretty much on every team I'm drafting, I'm mocking right now, it's Albert Wilson. Because this kid can flat out run. If he stays healthy, he legitimately has a chance to be a top 24 wide receiver, a wide receiver 2 in the NFL or in fantasy. And if that's all, and that's all you need good wide receivers. Josh Rosen last year obviously was a dumpster fire team, as you said. Offensive line was piss poor. He had Fitz, he had Christian Kirk. And that was about it. And Kirk was a rookie. He just didn't have anything. You know what I mean? He didn't have anything. Mike Gesicki's starting his 2nd year, who is I think a sleeper tight end. I just think Miami has this good offense that is being super undervalued right now because we don't really know if it's going to be Fitzpatrick. We don't know if it's going to be Rosen. We don't know what the team's going to look like. They got a new head coach, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of things. But it doesn't matter. If you got wide receivers that can turn and burn and beat out damn near every single cornerback that tries to guard them, all you got to do is throw the ball 60 yards. And Rosen can chuck that ball. Rosen can throw the football. Let's not, he's a good quarterback. He's a 1st-round quarterback who just had a crappy year in a crappy situation. And it sucks, but deal with it. Go to the next team and be better. Beat yourself. Beat all the naysayers. Beat the haters. And go out there and throw the ball to Albert frickin' Wilson. And that's what I think is going to happen. So I'm all in on Albert Wilson. Do you have any thoughts on Albert Wilson? Or even the Miami, wide receiving crew? I know you want Rosen to prove it before you go and draft him, but what about Albert Wilson or Kenny Stills or Devontae Parker? Any of them guys kind of intriguing or just no?
So I'm glad you brought up Wilson, and I like all the enthusiasm you have for him because he's an exciting guy. I pulled up their depth chart real quick on our lads, and they have Albert Wilson as a backup slot receiver, which is super confusing. They have him behind Bryce Butler.
Yeah, I can't buy into that, bro. I have no idea why they're doing that.
No. But no, you guys are totally right. So Albert Wilson is super interesting. I remember seeing his highlights and seeing him pop off early last season and going, what the shit? Oh, my goodness, this guy's finally putting it together. It seemed like he was a guy who really never was going to. He only did so-so with the Kansas City Chiefs for his first couple of years.
And he had Alex Smith throwing it to him in the Kansas City. You know what I mean? Like, unfortunately, I like Alex Smith, but that's just, it wasn't set up for him. You know what I mean?
No, I think maybe this is a situation where Wilson finally found an offense that he fits best in. If he can repeat anything close to what he was doing for those first 7 weeks and extrapolate that across an entire 16-game season, yes, you're right. This guy could be potentially a top 24 wide receiver. Kenny Stills is dangerous. I remember him still playing with the Saints. I remember it was a couple of years ago. He was a pain in the ass. The Dolphins beat the Chargers. Where I was like paying attention to it in my car on my phone, and I'm going, "What the shit? Kenny Stills again?" Like, he is a dangerous wide receiver. I remember I loved him at Oklahoma. I play with him in NCAA all the time. Like, he's a guy. He's a gamer. So I think if there are 2 people in this offense, yes, Albert Wilson and Kenny Stills are the 2 wide receivers you're going to select. And for sure, if you can get Albert Wilson with the last pick of your draft, I don't know, probably in a 10-man, yeah, but definitely in a 12, 14,
right?
For sure.
Right. Just the highest ceiling of those late guys, in my opinion. Like, he just is that speedster. You know what I mean? He could be a Brandon Cooks. I don't want to make that comparison, but I'm going to make that comparison. He has that potential, in my opinion.
No, that's legit. I mean, with these these running backs, Kenyon Drake, Kalen Ballage, there's potential there. I know we wanted to touch on Mike Gesicki real quick. Hopefully he's able to kind of put it together. He's not going to be the blocking tight end. That's why they got Dwayne Allen this offseason in free agency. But if Mike Gesicki can do anything like he was doing at Penn State, where he was just mossing guys and can be a red zone threat in the same way that Julius Thomas, like, he's the guy. I think of Julius Thomas as he wasn't a football player in college. He played a different sport. Mike Gesicki was a big volleyball player. You know, this guy's got hops for days. He's got length. He's got all the tools he needs to be successful in the NFL in this new breed of tight ends. So, dude, really, like, just looking at the roster now, this is really set up well potentially for Josh Rosen to be successful. Who knows what they're going to do? They drafted Chandler Cox, a fullback out of the Auburn, and but it's not a traditional fullback. This is going to be your Kyle Juszczyk type of fullback who can move around and do a bunch of different things for you. So let's see what this offense looks like. Drafted Michael Dieter in the 3rd round.
Who's coaching Miami right now?
Who's what, sorry?
Who's coaching him? Why can't I think of this right now?
Brian Flores, the former New England Patriots defensive coordinator. So, he's going to bring some X's and O's to the defensive side of the ball to really mix this thing up. They drafted Christian Wilkins. We're going away from fantasy football. Point is, this offense can be something. The only, smudge I can really see on here is the fact they still got Devontae Parker on this offense.
They needed MVP for the preseason, bro. They needed
it. Man. They've got AAF All-Star Reese Horn.
I was looking at that. I know, baby, my boy.
Yeah, dude, and Preston Williams, man. You got Preston Williams, who people thought was one of the top wide receivers coming out of this year's draft that just had a lot of off-the-field issues. So maybe Preston Williams steps in and is, a bright star for this team.
Like you're saying, there's a lot of weapons around Josh Rosen. Like, I'm not worried about taking a flyer on him, especially on a 2-quarterback league as a 3rd quarterback. You know what I mean? I don't mind Josh Rosen. Again, I don't think he's going to be like a top 12 quarterback. If you're playing in a 1-quarterback league, you don't need to really be taking a flyer on him. But again, I wanted to kind of get this to a 2-quarterback league situation just so we could talk a little bit more about these depth quarterbacks. But that was the show, man. That's great, dude. That was fun as could be. Man, we talked a lot of players that I don't think I would have ever talked about on a fantasy football show, which is why I like doing the deep sleeper shows. I'm glad all the fans chose that. Michael, thank you, my brother, for joining me, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. It's fun. I feel like a little boy again, staying up and talking about all the things we love, at a sleepover, man. We just can't go to sleep, pissing the parents off. We're like, let's talk about deep sleepers. I don't want to fucking go to bed today. Let's just
whip up the Madden game, brother. Come on. Let's just keep it quiet so mom doesn't yell at us,
Yeah, man, for sure. So I absolutely appreciate it. It was a blast. It's a little later than I'm used to staying up lately, but it's easy when we're talking about fantasy football, man. It's easy to be energized about this stuff.
It sure is. For all the fans listening, Mike, where should they go follow you? Where should they listen to you? Where's your give me the spiel about you.
All right, you guys, if you enjoy me enough to follow me on social media, My main Twitter handle is @ZoneTracks. That's ZONETRACKS. If you care to listen to my wonderful podcast about the Los Angeles Chargers on Blue Wire Pods, that's called Powder Blue Review. The Twitter handle for that is capital PBR for Review Podcast. So PB Review Podcast is the handle there. You can go follow all my work over at SBNationsBoltsFromTheBlue.com. And I think that's everything I do right now.
Jeez,
I think that's it. So really appreciate it, guys. A follow is always welcome.
Yes, always. Make sure you follow. I love it. Powder Blue Review just coming out. Kind of we started around the same time, actually, my podcast and your podcast, and it's fun to see them both growing. I'm loving it. We're getting a lot of good guests on our shows, and I like it. Yeah, that's great. If you're just listening here, make sure you follow the podcast here, RZR Fantasy NFL. Follow me personally on Twitter at Nick Faber NFL. You can always listen to us on SoundCloud, on Spreaker, on YouTube, on Spotify, on all the social media accounts. Just go type in RZR Fantasy Football. You'll find us. Listen up. We appreciate y'all listening. This has been a great show again. Having Mike on is always a blast. I can't wait to have you on again. And for everyone listening, thank you so much. Have a great day. Cigarettes and cheap wine. They're